Listen up, Russia's navy is cracking in front of our eyes, and the latest proof surfaced at one of the world's most watched choke points. A Russian Kilo-class submarine reportedly had to pop up near the Strait of Gibraltar after a fuel problem inside the hull. You don't break concealment in traffic like that unless staying submerged is more dangerous. That image, a combat sub forced into daylight, says something deeper than a single malfunction. It says the maintenance math, the supply chain, and the political pressure inside Russia's navy are all buckling at once. Quick pulse check: if a fleet can't safely repair what it sails, is it still combat credible? Yes or no? Tell me why in the comments. On paper, Kilo boats are among Russia's stealthiest assets, diesel-electric, very quiet on batteries, built to stalk shallow seas and shipping lanes. In practice, a fuel leak in a confined pressure hull is a serious fire and blast hazard. No nuclear reactor here, that's for Russia's SSNs and SSBNs, but the nuclear conversation still matters, because navies live or die by their safety culture. The same discipline that keeps a reactor compartment safe is the discipline that keeps fumes out of a diesel boat's lungs. When that culture erodes, every system, conventional or nuclear, gets riskier. If you've followed Russian submarine headlines, you know why this hits a nerve. The last time a sub defined a news cycle was the Kursk disaster in 2000 in the Barents Sea, when a nuclear-powered Oscar II went down with all 118 on board. Beyond the technical causes, what scarred public memory was everything around it: slow response, mixed messages, optics over honesty. One infamous clip showed a grieving mother being sedated at a meeting. Officials later said it was to calm her at the family's request. Believe that or don't, the point is the same. Moscow hates submarine stories because submarine stories expose competence, readiness, and truth. And that gets political, fast. Now put Gibraltar in context. On its own, a forced surfacing could be chalked up as a one-off. Submarines are complex, things break. But step back 2 years and you see a system Ukraine has methodically squeezed. The strategy wasn't just to hit hulls, it was to hit the ecosystem that keeps hulls ready. Sevastopol's dry docks and HQs got hammered. The Kerch Bridge and key rail nodes took repeated strikes. Depots, workshops, and command centers felt it too. Every successful hit doesn't just sink steel, it steals time. Time for inspections. Time for spares to arrive. Time for quality control. Add sanctions and export controls on top, and the pipeline for precision pumps, seals, electronics, and control valves narrowed to a trickle. You can still repair. You can still build. But now it's slower, more improvised, and more error-prone. That's how you get repair overload. The flagship yards are under threat or overbooked. Secondary ports, Novorossiysk, for example, don't have the same depth of tooling or teams. Skilled labor is stretched. Cannibalization becomes a habit. Pull a working unit from one hull to save another. Substitutions creep in: use a lower grade part for now and promise to swap it later. Paperwork certifies what the clock won't allow. Patch and sail quietly replaces fix and certify. That's a problem for any warship. For a submarine, where margin for error is measured in inches and minutes, it's a slow-motion disaster. And politics turns the crank tighter. The Black Sea Fleet was supposed to be a symbol: power over Ukraine, leverage across the Mediterranean, a southern counterweight to NATO. Instead, it became a running scoreboard of losses: dry docks burning, headquarters struck, ships disabled or sunk, hulls retreating east. That is humiliation Moscow cannot accept. So pressure flows downhill. Admirals order faster turnaround. Yard managers compress timelines. Captains accept deferred maintenance they would have rejected 5 years ago. The message is simple: be seen. Sail now, fix later. That's how you end up with a Kilo surfacing in distress at the world's front door. Ukraine didn't need to hit that boat today, it just had to keep hitting the things that keep boats safe and quiet. There's a geographic layer too. When Sevastopol became unsafe, dispersal became doctrine. Useful, but costly. Spares are now farther from where they're needed. Expert teams are thinner on each pier. Transit windows lengthen, and every mile adds risk. If something fails in the Mediterranean, there isn't a nearby Russian yard with the full bench to crack open a modern sub quickly and safely. A manageable issue becomes a major incident. A repair becomes a tow. A deterrent becomes a headline. Meanwhile, the nuclear stakes never completely leave the frame. Russia's sea-based nuclear deterrent, the SSBN leg of its nuclear triad, demands extreme maintenance discipline. Even if this Gibraltar story is about a diesel boat, The lesson is broader. If the culture that keeps conventional subs safe is under stress, you worry about the habits migrating into the nuclear fleet. Good navies are boring navies: procedures, checklists, certifications, and schedule padding. Bad navies are exciting right up to the catastrophe. Every headline about a sub in distress chips at the image that Russia wants to project, that it's a careful steward of both conventional and nuclear power at sea. Zoom back to Ukraine's deliberate pressure. Naval drones in Sevastopol turned a safe harbor into a hunting ground. Storm Shadow and Scalp hits prove long-range precision can reach deep into maritime infrastructure. Analysts have noted, again and again, that Ukraine degraded the Black Sea Fleet without a traditional blue water navy. That matters because submarines, more than any other ship type, depend on infrastructure you don't see: hull shops, battery rooms, acoustic labs, calibration benches, non-destructive testing rigs. You can't slap those into a warehouse overnight. You can't swap them with a friendly lender. And you can't keep quiet boats quiet without them. Add sanctions and the logistical knife cuts deeper. Before the war, specialists and parts flowed through global networks: Germany, Italy, South Korea, and beyond. Today, everything is slower, grayer, and more expensive. Middlemen add opacity, prices climb, quality drops. On the receiving end, Ukrainian strikes on bridges and rails compound the delay. The result is a pipeline that delivers eventually, not on time, which is another way of saying after the captain already sailed. All of that would be bad enough, but public optics matter to the Kremlin almost as much as readiness. After Kursk, Moscow learned never to stand in front of a submarine failure and take questions. So it denies, deflects, or stays silent. The problem is that choke points, Gibraltar, the Danish Straits, the Bosporus, are full of civilian eyes, smartphone cameras, AIS traces, and merchant crews. No comment can erase a mast, a tow, or a plume. Information inexorably leaks, just like fuel. Even allies are showing strain in public. Belarus's Alexander Lukashenko, Putin's closest partner, recently complained that he and Putin spend their days figuring out how to survive in a world that's being torn into pieces. Strip away the theatrics and you hear a confession: the system is under stress: money, parts, time, and legitimacy. That last word, legitimacy, is the most precious. Russia isn't a democracy, but it still runs on consent, an expectation that the state is competent, strong, and protective. Submarines in distress chip at that story because they blur the line between military excellence and preventable failure. And the public remembers Kursk. So what does a single kilo near Gibraltar actually mean for NATO and Ukraine? First, it's proof that pressure works. Kyiv didn't need to fire on that hull. It needed to keep the dockyards hot, the rails risky, the depots vulnerable, and the timelines tight. Second, it shows that Russia's attempt to project strength into the Mediterranean now carries higher operational risk. A healthy kilo is a real threat to shipping, patrol aircraft, and underwater infrastructure. A kilo with safety issues is a liability and a rescue problem. Third, it reinforces why sanctions and export controls matter, not because they stop production outright, but because they degrade precision and predictability. Submarines don't forgive degraded precision. There's also a nuclear signaling angle that Moscow can't fully control. The Kremlin wants to project that the sea-based leg of its nuclear triad is untouchable, professional, and always ready. Every conventional submarine headline that hints at sloppy maintenance or rushed deployments undermines that message. No one is saying Russia's SSBNs are unsafe. The point is subtler. If the Navy's culture normalizes sail now, fix later, the risk envelope across the fleet inflates. Responsible nuclear powers keep that envelope tiny. Where does this go next? Expect more of the same pressure from Ukraine: strike the enablers, not just the ships. Expect Russia to keep dispersing hulls, which helps survivability but punishes logistics. Expect more quiet cannibalization to keep icons in the water. And expect more sightings, more half-denials, and more isolated incidents that look a lot like a pattern to anyone paying attention. There's an ugly choice sitting on a Russian admiral's desk right now. Do you hold damaged hulls for deep repairs and accept the optics of fewer ships at sea? Or do you push them out fast to look strong and accept higher odds of accidents that make you look weak? One path preserves capability, the other preserves the photo op. The Gibraltar story suggests which path is winning, and why more headlines are coming. Here's the bottom line. A fleet's power isn't just tubes and torpedoes. It's maintenance math, supply chain friction, crew training hours, and leadership discipline, the boring nuclear-grade habits that keep sailors alive and ships quiet. Ukraine attacked those habits by attacking time and tools. Sanctions tightened the vice. And the Kremlin's obsession with optics turned the vice again. That is why a Kilo-class sub ends up in daylight at the world's front door, and why we should expect more forced surfacings, more tows, and more awkward explanations as this war grinds on. Tell me this, if you ran Russia's Black Sea Fleet today, would you ground damaged subs and admit weakness, or keep pushing them to sea and gamble on luck? Which choice actually saves your navy, and which choice just saves face?